Say hello to someone.
Oh man. How'd that go? Am I frozen?
No, you're good.
Oh, there we go. What's up, guys? Today is Tuesday, April 30th, and I am excited for a really special one today. We have a great guest with us, Brett Chotkevys. Damn it. Yo, I was practicing that all earlier too, and I knew I was going to fuck it up. Brett Chotkevys, him and his wife, Laura, they have a podcast over on their YouTube where they discuss marriage and investing and residential assisted living, which is our topic for today. Before I jump into those things, I want to talk about just a couple events coming up. Once dumb fuck hangs up his damn phone. Thank you. So much for not cursing in 10 minutes. Big event coming up is we have on the 16th, we have our open house mastermind coming out in the office. This month's event is on acquisitions. So if you want to get into real estate and you want to learn more about acquisitions in off-market real estate, come on down, have a chat about it. We're here all the time. Right after May 16th, another big event, local, is Iconic Messengers meetup. I'll be there. Tony will be there. Pat Hilton's event. Again, it's May 18th, 17th, and 18th. Sorry, I'm a little dumb. 17th and 18th, again, fabulous event. If you're in the DFW area, you have a business and you want to scale, you want to look to grow your image, you have to be there. He's got a free link. I put it in the description of this video. Click it to apply to attend. Honestly, it'd be a great event for everybody.
It's not just real estate based?
No, it's everything business. So anything, I don't want to say just entrepreneurs, but if you want anything, right? A doctor, you're a chiropractor and you want to start doing
just
more.
All businesses that you're self-employed type of thing. Yeah, sweet.
And again, he's throwing it together. He's got a link in there. He's inviting you out for free. I think he's got a limited amount of seats. Nothing, I'm not getting any kickback or anything like that. So this is just
that's fine.
Pure knowledge and sharing, right? So without further ado, I want to invite our guest, Brett, to come up over here.
How's it going, guys? I'm good, brother. How you doing?
Not bad, man. I appreciate you coming today.
Oh, for sure.
I ended up before I muted Tony before he had a chance to actually say it, but he complimented your hair right as I took you off stage and such, but you weren't able to hear it.
Oh, good. I love it. It keeps me memorable.
So where are you out of today, Brett?
So I'm in Georgetown, Texas, a little bit north of Austin. So not too far from you guys.
Monument Cafe in downtown Georgetown.
Good. Yeah. We live right by that area.
The greatest chocolate cream pie.
Yeah. Yeah, we go there for breakfast all the time. It's super good.
I actually no, I think I threw a banner up here too. But if anybody, so later on we're going to have a Q&A. If anybody has any questions, drop them in the comments, and we're going to file them, and then later on touch back on them at any time. Brett, what year did you get into real estate? Why don't you talk to me about your story, right? Like, tell me a little about yourself.
Sure. So before I jump into that, a quick little thing there. We talked about the podcast. So it's called The Donkey and the Bee, right? My wife and I do one. I'm the donkey, right? Essentially a jackass. And my wife's the bee, the biatch, right? And it's essentially, how does a husband and wife work together to build a badass marriage? We talk about marriage, entrepreneurship, and financing or finance. So we talk heavily on investing, how to work together with a team. And I think there's just a lot of guys out there, like, how do I get my spouse involved, right? Like my wife has a dude's perspective on money and investing. So we talk a lot about how to get together on that kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
So that's one of them.
I will say that's incredibly needed.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that you did that. I'm going to start watching. I'm single, but previously that was a huge thing. So
yeah.
I apparently need some lessons.
I'm thankfully the wife in my case is in title, so she's in the business, but she's still separated. But yeah,
gotcha. Well, good. I think it's super necessary for most places. So second one, so I do a separate one on my own called Assisted Living Investing, and that's where we talk about this niche here of assisted living. And I'm just sharing my journey, documenting how I'm scaling, growing my business, and really sharing all that kind of stuff. So it is on all podcast app. It's on YouTube as well. So Assisted Living Investing, you can find it on podcasts or my name, Brett Chotkevys, on YouTube. What
drew you? So I've watched some of your videos, right? Doing a little homework. And I'm going to ask Tommy to pull one up in a little while and kind of play it in the background, just because I think it's an awesome video. Just to even, it's your walkthrough one of your 18 unit, right? Yeah, I think it's awesome. What made you get into assisted living, right? Why not wholesaling? Why not something easy, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Everybody's getting into wholesaling nowadays, right? So
I started in flipping and wholesaling maybe 10 years ago. And we were in Southern California at the time. We grew our business there, and we flipped, 250 or so houses, and did that over 8 years or so. Grew that company. And then I wanted something bigger. I wanted, I call it my one and done deal, right? Like, I wanted one big deal. I can do one big deal a year. That's a 7-figure deal. That's going to have incredible cash flow. That's going to, essentially make me a multimillionaire. I wasn't doing it flipping, a bunch of little houses that was making me 30, 40 grand. And then I was spending it all on marketing. And, the ebbs and flow of real estate is, it's big wins. And then it's like, shit, like it all went to hell in a handbasket. And now I'm back to zero, right? Like, so I wanted something consistent that was like, I can do this, I can grow this, I can pull my time back. And that's, ultimately what we're talking about today, how one deal in this type of niche is big enough. Really, I make 500 grand a year and I work less than 4 hours a week. And I did that probably about year 2 with this style of deal.
Don't look at me like that. And you're the one. I joined you. You're the ones doing single family. I used to be an offshore engineer.
I've been doing so I'm sitting here punching myself in the face hardcore, because for the last 20 years I've been doing single family churn and burns, and it's the ebbs and flows, and everything that you're saying, I'm like, why am I still doing this for 20 years? Meanwhile, though, we're about to take on probably the biggest endeavor of our careers. So that's why this timing of this, this episode with you is exciting for me, because I'm like right there, so it's incredible.
We're actually, we're looking, and we can pull that up later and actually analyze it. We like doing all that type of stuff live, but we got a deal that we're looking at, right? We have friends that are traveling nurses. They're trying to set roots down. I can't even talk. And, it just looks like to be a good partnership. So that's our next venture, right? That we're, looking into.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think you got to get some of these bigger deals going.
Yes.
Yeah. So I love it because I can have an active business, and I can have a passive real estate play. I literally have both sides of this right? I have monthly cash flow that's consistent, and then I have a huge multi-million-dollar exit play whenever I want to, sell or whatever I need to do.
And you're doing mostly, correct me if I'm wrong, you're doing build too, right? So you're actually doing ground up and then.
Yes.
Okay.
So I've done a conversion remodel, and you mentioned one of those videos that's a tour on the YouTube. That's that product. That's 15 bedroom, about 6,300 square feet. That was an existing home that we gutted and did an addition. We're building
the mansion
now.
Tour?
Yeah, I call them mansions. Yeah, I call them assisted living mansions or memory care mansions, because we really focus end of life, and you get dementia and things too. But project we're working on now is we're building a neighborhood of these memory care mansions, and they're each about 10,000 square feet. They're 16 bed, 17 bath, big rooms, huge vaulted great room, like glass walls. It looks like you go into like a boutique hotel. It doesn't look like a facility. It doesn't look like a hotel or a hospital kind of vibe. It's just like some badass mansion. You walk in, and more than doing just that, like a single of them, it's like, well, how do I take this to the next level? And how do I scale this? And, really my path, my journey is, okay, I bought 8 acres. I cut in my own private road down this thing, and I have next door neighbors. I have 4 of them. They're almost on like 2-acre lots, and they all have their own driveway. There's no big like parking lot in the front. There's no red curb, right? It just looks like you drive in. It's like, damn, like some custom home builder came and built a neighborhood of mansions for a bunch of rich people, right? But really on the inside, it's all purpose built for end of life. It's all ADA, and everyone's got their own private room. We have a chef in each mansion. We have a salon. We have, everything that you could get at the 100-bed big smelly facility, you can do in a custom designed mansion.
And I'll say that one of our core values that we're in the infant stages. We haven't set up the 8-acre multi-mansion thing. So one of the core values that I'm trying to instill in it is there's a lot of bad places that exist for people in that space that need to go to those places, right? And they're negative, and you just feel death, right? And I feel like you just described what is going to be one of our core values, is like, I don't want them to dread the end. I want them to live out whatever it is in something that they're happy in, Yeah. And I feel like you designed that in your mansions.
Wait till we pull it up and do a walkthrough of it, but they're beautiful. They're absolutely stunning. I have a lot of questions in regards to like a lot of the care and the wellness of life. Because like he just said, we're looking at it and we're like, all right, how can we provide for these individuals that need it, right? And also give them more, right? Yeah. So we're thinking about like, all right, gardening or trips, yada yada yada, right? How to add things to. We're thinking about having an in-care daycare, right? Just to have kids involved, and that we've seen a bunch of different things, or heard of different things. Are you? This is so obviously this. You want to talk about this?
Yeah. So this is one of our mansions. This is the one that was an actual home conversion. It started with a 1974 ranch-style house, single level, and I essentially gutted it down to the studs. Did about a 3,000 square foot addition, and this mansion here, this is 15 private rooms. There's 12 bathrooms in here, and you can see like it just looks and feels like a high-end home. It doesn't feel like a facility. We have our open kitchen here. Here's our chef, and so we have somebody there every single day to take care of end of life on the care side, right? Like you have your own chef. We have managers who run it. We have 24/7 care staff. They're not sleeping there. They're actually, there's 2 ladies that are there awake 24 hours a day, and everyone has their own private room, a private bath. And we essentially just take care of people at the end of life. And that's really what our niche is. It's like after they've gone through, I call it the big box funnel. They'll go to the 4-story building with, 150, independent living beds. And then they'll move down to the 60-bed assisted living. And then instead of going to that like 20-bed, memory care wing, they come to us. And because ultimately, like, we can provide all of the same care, service, amenities, medical stuff that the big facility can do it, but we can do it more intimate. And really the heart of our success is two things. It's a gorgeous building, but it's love and genuine care. And it is so hard to do that when you have a big facility with 30 caregivers and managers that are literally like turning every 6 months.
Yeah.
Right. We can create more of a family environment, and you know the families, you know the resident,
Yeah,
you
he's
know
got a
everything
salon.
about
He's
the
got a
situation.
salon.
Yeah, I saw that earlier.
I do have a salon, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that, and again, so okay, and if my mom's watching, mom, earmuffs, I would be comfortable putting my mom here, right? And
I think that's the requirement, right?
Like, I
anything
think-
that we build, we want to make sure that we're comfortable putting mom there.
well, on the single family
I hope she's listening.
acquisition side, I've been telling people this, like I've gone into so many facilities to get papers signed, and I'm grossed out because it's just so dreary. Like it's heartbreaking. Like the last one, the lady didn't even have a TV. She's just laying in a bed all by herself, nothing in the room, no TV. She can't get out of bed. She had no legs. And I'm like, this is like, someone just kill me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why am I even here? You know? So no, this is amazing. I'm like uber excited for you and well, more for your patients.
Yeah. So, I mean, I literally had my grandma living here with us. She passed a few months ago, but she was with us for 4 years. And we came from this perspective of what do I want for my literal family? And because that's what everyone wants, right? What would you want for yourself? You want a private room. You want your own bathroom. You want to have all the medical stuff you need, but you don't want to be in something that feels like a facility.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you walk into the big facilities and you can like, it's heavy on your shoulders. You actually feel like the depression.
Yes.
And you smell it, and it feels like death, and you just like get creeped out. And so you walk into our assisted living is called Platinum Resort. You walk into Platinum, and it's just light and it's bright. There's so many window walls and natural light, and it just feels like almost like Chip and Joanna Gaines like built an assisted living. That's really what we're going for.
How is the I don't actually, you just blew my mind, so I don't necessarily know which rabbit hole to go down, but some of my initial questions, I come from the culinary background stupid amount of years ago. How do you so if you have 18 beds, 20 different people, whatever, how do you do the meal care? I know you have an on-site chef, right? Like what's that systemized system look like?
So we run it in this way. We have one chef. He works either 5 or 6 days a week, 45, 50 hours a week. And he gets there at 9:30. So he's serving lunch live and dinner live and then prepping breakfast for the next day. So there's a few different things to unpack there, but because ultimately, if you're going to work an 8.5 hour shift, you can't serve all meals live. Like you have to pick which one is not going to be live. And practically, I think the best way to do it is this way, where you have breakfast, more continental style, because you have to get everyone up. And if you try to get everyone up and brush their teeth and do their hair and give them their medications and get them dressed, and again, like there's people they're they need help toileting, they need help getting dressed, bathing, all of these things. They can't do it themselves any longer. It takes a lot of time. So to get everyone at the table at say 8:30 for breakfast is not realistic. They're going to be waiting for, some people are going to get there at 6:30, some people are going to get there at 9. So really we have 2 caregivers 24/7. So 2 of them are going 2 by 2, getting everyone ready, doing their morning routine, getting them all dressed, bring them to the table. And we have continental, where the chef made something from the day before. There's our night staff already made the coffee, the orange juice, prep the fresh fruit. And it's like, here's breakfast, here's your morning meds, and we're going to get the next 2. And then it's just a trickle. Practically, it's very easy from that perspective. Then everyone's out of the table. And now I can serve lunch live. My chef's coming in, he's cleaning up his station from breakfast, and he's making lunch and serving that live, and then dinner, serving it live. So really my intention is I want to take the foods that most of our residents, and I call them grandmas and grandpas, what they like, right? And we're in Texas, and they like comfort food, and they like country food, and they like hamburgers, and they like tacos, right? Things that you and I want to eat. They don't want mush. They don't want pudding. That's a bunch of bullshit. Like that's what they get at hospital. Yep. So they want food that you and I would want to eat. So I want to have that. And I like to do it really just more elevated. Here's the common things that we all love eating. Now let's make it homemade. Let's make it scratch. I'm not buying a bunch of frozen stuff. And then we're plating in a way that we're almost like a fine dining restaurant. I have like lots of different types of plates. I got wood rectangles. I got bowls that I got in from Spain. I got all sorts of different things. And we're plating like it's a fancy restaurant. And we're literally like setting the mood. You have the dining room there. We're going to turn on like Frank Sinatra or whatever we're going to have. We're going to turn on the chandelier. And it's like you transition from a home-like environment into like a little restaurant type environment. And our chef, he's like Emil Lagasse because he's in the center of the house. And he's like literally the entertainment, right? Like what our grandmas look forward to every single day is the food. They're past the point where they are going out and like going to Target and stuff like that. Family's not taking them out anymore. They're in the last couple of years of life, and it's hard to transfer and get them in a car and all that kind of stuff. Their entertainment is watching the chef. And this is the thing that they look forward to the most. Here are these awesome meals that we're able to do. And it's super simple for one person to do it. We have 16 residents. We have a couple managers and stuff. So he's cooking for 20 people. And so really he's there like he's the chef and the waiter, and he's dropping all the foods. He's clearing them. It allows for the best quality of care because my caregivers are not cooking. They're not doing casseroles and slopping stuff on a paper plate. They're not spending an hour and a half doing all the dishes because it's a buttload of dishes when you have to cook for 20 people. It's like Thanksgiving every single day. So they are staying out of the kitchen. My chef is handling everything, which means I can provide the best of the best care, and they get the, really the amenity of having their own custom chef. So I think it's the best way to go in this way. We obviously have extra expenses, but honestly, I'm paying $22 an hour for a chef times, 45 hours a week, but my food costs are actually lower by probably about $2,000 because I'm buying everything from scratch. I'm not buying semi-cooked meals that are frozen that you throw in the oven. Those are actually have a higher margin that cost more. So, I would say about half of that labor cost is already removed from the model, but now my income is higher, right? That's really my whole goal.
And your food waste is probably nil because if you have a skilled, trained chef, he can, just in the restaurant, coming from the restaurant world, almost nothing goes to waste, right? So the chef can create, when he creates his menu, he can create sub dishes from the leftovers, soups and things like that, right?
I'm sure there's also some form of intimacy where he starts learning what your guests like to eat, right? Like I know I used to be offshore, and just being offshore for 3-4 months, that cook that's on there with you knows exactly when you wake up, this is how you like your eggs, this is what you want when you wake up, when you have it, right? Hey, Betty's not going to eat, XYZ, she doesn't like all this stuff. And it comes to another level of intimacy that I really like.
Happiness, right? And the happier they are, the better they're going to feel, the better they're going to make your staff feel, right? And they're going to be less grumpy and not throwing things like, so overall, from the moment you walk in, everyone's elevated.
Where on, I'm trying to think how to ask this question. Where on the pricing map, right? If you would go into that, right? From affordable housing to big shops, right? Because I'm thinking like these bigger end hotels, right? That do cost an arm and a leg. They don't provide that intimacy, right? So where are you trying to fall?
So financially, my goal is to match the highest comp. That's new construction. Usually the big box, right? We talked about that model where they have the 4-story building that it's luxury product. They build them across the country. They rent them out to big corporate. If I can compare to what is the end of life in that facility, right? Usually that 20-bed memory care, I'm trying to match that for pricing. And really my intention is I want no excuse for daughter, who is usually the power of attorney, not to move mom when she had that incident, right? Because they're not starting with me. They're going to start and they're going to decline, and then they're probably decline one more time, and then they're going to come to me because I'm really the most expensive in the market, and they're going to hold off as long as they can. I want there to be no reason why she cannot get her own room, her own bathroom, her own chef, her own salon, everything she needs from a medical perspective. She can have doctors and dentists and hospice. We can talk about all that kind of stuff later. We can offer all of that in the mansion. And if you have the money for it, because we're all private pay, if you have the money to go through and, hey, we're going to fork up the big dollars for this, there's no reason to be in the big corporate facility when you can come to my mansion.
So I'm gonna bring up Ross's question now, just because you did touch on it, right? Are these private pay or Medicare? You're saying you're only private pay?
Correct. Yeah. Most assisted livings are all private pay. The market is pretty split into, the haves and the have-nots, unfortunately, to kind of put it that way. And if you have it and mom prepared for it, right? You're selling the house. You're taking care of, you're running the numbers. Hey, I have 2 years or 5 years or whatever it is for mom at the end of life. Or, honestly, about 40% of the time, our families, the children, are coming up with that cash because mom didn't prepare, or it all went to dad first. Dad got sick, died, and then, mom has nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
So private pay, I think, is the best way to go, especially for this niche on the higher side.
What about, and just because I see some questions on it and they're in my head, what about insurance, right? So what are the requirements there? Is there any additional tricky things, right?
Your insurance.
Yeah, exactly. Your insurance.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so your insurance, and then on the other side, like, do you, he already said he's private pay, but like, is there any compensation from insurance, I guess, right? Like, is there anything?
Yeah, so I'll hit that part first. The only thing we will work with is long-term life insurance. And technically, they still pay us. I have everyone on QuickBooks. They get a recurring payment, right? I on my first, I get all my checks. It all comes in. But usually the long-term life insurance will reach out to us every about 3 months and say, hey, send us an invoice for this resident monthly, blah, blah, blah. We'll send all that kind of stuff. And then the family gets reimbursed for it. So it's technically, we are still charging that 100% of the time. We're charging every single month. But the families who have that option can get that reimbursement from their long-term life insurance policy. So the other part of the question you asked about other types of insurance for me is I have 3 different types of insurance. I have my real estate company, right, which owns the building, triple net to the operations company. That company has its own, building insurance, right? And so I have that on one side. On the other side, my operations company, that has its own general liability insurance there. That's my second part. And then the third thing I have is work comp insurance for my staff. So I have those 3. The first part, the real estate, it's pretty standard stuff, right? Like my building's insured replacement cost for, $2.5 million or something like that, right? That's what it is. I'm paying like $12,000 a year or something. Yeah. Don't quote me on that. It's gone up the last few years, like every single year. And then my operations company, this is where I think is important, and people may not know this, but even though I am assisted living and I'm technically memory care, certified Alzheimer's, we have hospice, we have home health, we have doctors, we have all these people come into our building. By definition, assisted living is non-medical. It's just taking care of ADLs, right? Activities of daily living. A nursing home, by definition, is medical. It has the word nurse in the title, right? Like you have to have nurses on salary. They have to be there in the building. Assisted livings do not. So as that plays forward to the question of insurance, I'm a non-medical building. I provide month-to-month leases to a bunch of seniors who want to come. And part of the benefit of my lease is I have people there, 24/7 care, that will help you with your normal activities of daily living, toileting and showering and eating and bathing and all that kind of stuff, right? All of those other medical things that I say that is my niche that I can provide is by outside service people that are not on my payroll and not on my insurance, that come in and use the open space in my assisted living, in my mansion, to be able to take care of those things. And those are charged totally separate. And the liability is totally separate from me and my company. So there's very limited risk technically in this space. I think the only real risk is abuse and neglect. It's really your staff, right? Like, are they mistreating people? Are they neglecting them, getting bed sores, things like that? And that really just goes back to your manager and making sure you're on top of your stuff.
But there is no extra layer of insurance for that part. It's a question.
No, it is not.
Right.
anything that's your policy is voided anywhere if you're breaking the law, if you're abusing people, right? Like,
yes,
that's on you.
yeah. No, I just was like, what if I don't know? You hear all sorts of stories. I was just curious.
I keep watching Happy Gilmore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, to that perspective, like, especially for our niche, right? It's end of life. They are dropping, mom or dad off, and they are knowing this is his last stop. He may have come from his house and then 2 other stops, but now is the last stop. And they are expecting he's going to die, right? He is at my assisted living to pass. Hopefully it's not right away. Hopefully it's several years. But nonetheless, they're coming in with the perspective that we're going to do our best to support him, honestly, through death. We're here to ease him into passing. So they're not surprised or angry or litigious when he does pass. Neither when they fall, right? Like, you are declining. You lose your ability to walk and talk and all sorts of stuff as you decline and have memory care. It is not my responsibility to make sure dad doesn't get hurt. He's going to. My responsibility is to make sure that someone is here and can respond very quickly when he does. So that expectation is really set on the front side, but people know going into it, right? And I think especially if you're in a more middle income to affluent income area, they are not looking to be litigious. They know that you're doing the best they can. They've already been taking care of mom or dad for several years. They know how difficult it is. They know they're going to fall and get hurt and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Anybody committing their parents, right? Like, has to, in their head, they mentally sign off like, all right, this is, she's going here for these reasons, right? X, Y, Z. She's going to go here. Mom's going to go here to live out her days in the best health possible. And then eventually this is her last stop, right?
But it also, like, if mom was living with me and I got to work and I have stuff to do, if there's, like he said, 24/7 people around, where if she did fall, she's not worrying, did she put her life alert thing on? Like, if she did fall, there's someone there instantly to mitigate it and treat and, and deal with it. And if they had to go to the hospital, I'm sure there's procedures and standard operating procedures for that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm gonna bring up Melanie's question, actually, because it's a great one. She says, love this guy, love all this. Second question about home caretaker. What's the ratio of caretaker to resident? Are they CNAs or just caretakers?
Sure. So I'll give you a general and then a specific answer. Generally speaking, if you're anywhere in the country, it is state by state specific, whether you need a certain amount of training for your caregivers, for your manager, all those kind of things. Same with ratios. It may be state specific. So I'll give you some general guidelines, and specifically I'm in Texas. So this is what it looks like here. Here in Texas, you do not have to have a CNA. You can have, ultimately, you just have to be 18. If you're 18 and you have a clear background, we can hire you. So most of the time, our caregiver avatar is a young mom, or a female, 20 to 40 or 50 years old is our who we're usually hiring. And they have a big heart. They are doing this not for the money, right? Like, we pay good for compared to what this is, but nonetheless, you're not getting rich doing this job. You are doing it because you are fulfilled by this and you want to make decent money and live with a purpose, work with a purpose. So back to your question on ratio. So we run 2 caregivers 24/7 when we are licensed for 16. So that means it's 1 to 8. Right. And here in Texas, there is not an actual ratio in the code. It just says the word adequate. You have to have adequate staff at all times during the day. And I think the state likes to make it kind of in that gray area to protect you, but then also to kind of stick you when they come and want to. So again, that is state by state, totally different. I really strongly feel that you need 2 caregivers, and that's really why I like going back to the 16 number. So I'll unpack that a smidge here. But if to maximize income versus quality of care, right? Or maybe to say differently, to maximize profit versus quality of care, I think it is best to have 16 full beds and 2 caregivers, because ultimately I like this 1 to 8 ratio. For this ratio, 1 caregiver can adequately and do a good job to take care of 8 residents. But to that point, I do not think that one caregiver by themselves can take care of 8. Like if you had an 8-bed assisted living, if you have any person who's over 200 pounds and they fall, it takes 2 people. They're dead weight.
Yep.
2 people to get them off the ground. So therefore, if you had 8 beds and you had 2 caregivers, you might as well have 8 more residents, right? Like you could staff that. You could have the same operating expenses. Most of your expenses are staff. You could have the same expenses and double the income, right? You just need a bigger building. So, but to take that model even further and say, well, what if you did 3 caregivers and now you had 24 residents? I don't think that's good. I think that's too big. It gets out of this. I mean, I build mansions, and mansions are houses. They're just big houses, right? Fancy luxury houses. But if I had 24 beds, like my hallway would be really long, right? I would not look like a mansion anymore. It's okay to have a 10,000 square foot house. You're talking 24 beds. Now it kind of feels like a hospital or a hotel. And then it takes away that vibe that I'm going for. So
I was gonna say, yeah, you're tainting your avatar of what your facility is, right? So you kind of have the metric and the avatar of this is my facility, this is how many people I think works in it. Like you broke it down to a science that works really well for you. And I think it's
and science being like math, like the numbers equal out the best, right? I can provide the best care and make the most profit.
Yeah.
And also, because when you add all these people together, there's also wheelchairs involved. There's also walkers, I'm sure, right? So you're talking about the hallways. You can have people gangwaying each other and hitting into each other with their walkers and stuff. So.
Well, even he mentioned the long hallway. Outside of the aesthetics of it, I feel like my 2 nurse friends would hate me if they had to do laps up and down, I don't know, a 12-room hallway. They're going to be like, I'm getting too many steps.
Like 80 feet long.
Yeah.
So you saw in that video, you pulled it up, right? Like that hallway we have, it's 6 feet wide. So you have plenty of space to get 2 wheelchairs down. But what we did, and this kind of changes the subject a little bit, I hate this idea where you walk in these facilities and they have the long, dark hallways, right? And you have rooms on both sides. So we built it where it's just a solid glass wall. And then you can see the garden and like the actual backyard, right? Like I really like that. You open your door as a resident and you see a big glass wall.
Yeah.
You don't look across the hallway and you either feel like you're in a hotel or a hospital. None of them are good. In this perspective, it's just natural light and it's, a beautiful mansion.
Yeah. Well, being able to open their door and let natural light in from both sides, let's just say, because maybe there's a window on there inside their room and then the natural light. Whereas the last one that I got a contract signed in, like the lady was coding across the hall and I'm just trying to do my thing in here. And I'm like, this is like horrible. I just felt so trapped.
Yeah.
So to touch base a little bit on, you said earlier that you're a non-medical facility, but what about, so you don't have any nurses involved, right? So you mentioned
on
medicine on your payroll. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
so you outsource that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about that.
He's asking about, medicine and stuff like that. So can you answer Melanie's questions a little? Or?
Yeah, for sure. So to start wide, and then we'll dial into Melanie's question. So I call them outside services. It's a common term. There's technically 10 different outside services. This is other companies that have their own payroll, their own staff, their own insurance that come into all assisted livings, including mine. So again, like the hospice, the home health, the doctor, the nurses, the podiatrist, the dentist, mobile x-ray, mobile vaccine, chaplain, that's probably most of them. Pharmacist, that may be the last one. So going down that be specific part, talking about the medications, we have a relationship with several different people, outside service to make this work. There's the pharmacist, which they actually go and we have an app on the iPad and we put in all their meds and it will deliver, right? Like almost every day we get multiple deliveries of medications. So that's how the medications get to the building, right? Like we don't have to go pick them up. Their family doesn't have to bring them. But how we hand them out is, so we have another relationship with the doctor, because obviously the doctor is the one who signs that prescription, right? The doctor is one of the outside service people that come to our assisted living every single week. And when I say every single week, usually they send, not themselves, but they send their PA, their physician's assistant. And every week the PA comes through, and she may not see every single resident every week, but they have some type of rotation, whether it's monthly or whatever it is, right? So they'll come, they'll see whoever needs to be seen. Then they will write up an adjustment to care plan or not, if needed, and then have a little powwow meeting with our managers and or the family on the phone if need be, if we're going to be changing things, right? So a lot of that time, it's medication changes. We're just dialing things in. We need more of this. We need less of this. We have sundowning over here. Let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. After 3 weeks, let's try something different, right? A lot of it just kind of that type of mentality. So the first part of this is, hey, we get a new doctor's order for this medication, right? It's electronic or it's written, and then it comes electronic. They will either put it into the system called an EMR, or we can put it into the system or adjust it, but then it goes off to the pharmacy, and then the pharmacy delivers it. So going down the sequence of events here, now we have a doctor's order for the medication. We have the medication delivered to the assisted living. We have a big med cart, and we have a backup area for meds that are locked up for overflow. Then we have our caregivers give the medications. And so I can spend a little bit of time talking about this, because that's probably where she's getting to with this question. Is ultimately we have our nurses. The nurses are able to medication delegate. And it sounds like a fancy term. It's a really simple process. They at least for us, they come in every single month, and we'll have a big team meeting. And during that team meeting, they'll medication delegate, and they'll spend about an hour to 90 minutes, go over the most basic stuff. Here's the common medications we have. Here's how to use them. Here's how to put on a patch, nasal spray, these kind of meds, all this kind of stuff, right? Here's the most common, like it's pretty much the same meds over and over again in an assisted living. So here's how we do that. They teach them how to do it. And then essentially our managers will do a 3-day training where they shadow day 1, maybe shadow or do it themselves day 2, and then they're doing it day 3 on their own, passing the medications, and our managers are watching. So we teach them how to do that. They have extra questions. We have little quizzes and stuff to make sure they know what they're doing. But essentially, with us, with our license type, even though we're non-medical, we are allowed to assist with the resident taking their medication. So, which means we have a med cart. It has their little section of the cart. You pull it out, it has their name on it, resident number 15. It has all their meds. You can look in the iPad, right? Like, here's today at lunch meds, all right? At noon, they get this and this, right? At dinner, they're going to get this and this. So a different person will pass that later. But at lunch, they're getting this and this. So you pop all the meds, you double check it. They teach you how to do this. You give it to the grandma. Here's your little cup of water. Here, it's either before lunch, after lunch. You know what the procedure is. And you hand them the little cup, and you watch them take it. And sometimes, especially with dementia, it can take a while to get grandma to take her meds, or sometimes they have swallowing problems and you have to crush it and all sorts of different things. But ultimately, that's the process there. You don't need anything fancy. It's a chain of events where other people have, honestly, the liability on them, teaching our staff how to do it. And we take it in the most simple fashion and say, okay, we're just going to assist grandma, and here's her meds for lunchtime. She may have different meds for dinner time. Sometimes they may have meds in the middle of the night. They may have all sorts of different meds. It's all in the system. We know exactly when it is. The system will tell us if it's done, if it's not done, if it's late. Our manager gets emails, all sorts of different things that are all in there. And then really our managers are overseeing this, because it's honestly usually just our caregivers. If you're in a big facility, you'll have a special med tech, but we just have caregivers that we have promoted to kind of level 2, a med tech. You have been with us for a while. You know what you're doing. We can trust you. We're going to teach you this next step. We give them a raise for that. And, usually it is 2 caregivers, right? So at lunchtime, most of the meds are going to be at lunch or dinner or breakfast, right? Like, you're at the table. One caregiver is sitting with the grandmas, helping them eat, helping them cut, helping them, feed them. I mean, sometimes they literally get to the point where they can't lift a fork and stuff anymore. So one caregiver is doing that. The other person is passing meds, and then they finish up whatever meal that is.
The only reason I'm going to pull it up right now is just because I believe it goes hand in hand with what we're already discussing. But what is EMR? Explain this to a single family residential guy.
Sure.
I
EMAR,
don't
so
even know what the question
electronic
is asking.
medication. I don't know what, actually, I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but there's a lot of different options. We use ECP for EMAR. We've used several in the past. There's lots of different options out there. But essentially, you're able to integrate all of this different stuff. It links up to the pharmacy, and you can know exactly what's going on. You can have it on an app form, or you can pull up in a desktop. And really, it's just medication tracking for all that kind of stuff. So when you get a delivery, it's automatedly, like from the pharmacy, they're all connected. The doctors are connected with all that kind of stuff. If they get sent out because they have an EMS call, there's a sheet where you can print it out, and then you can give it to EMS, and they can take it to the hospital, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. I'm gonna bring up Tip's question, and so I know we've already discussed you like building, doing new construction, right? Versus doing converting it. But what about in the beginning of his question, right? Commercial versus residential area. How do you go about finding the right area? What, when building?
That's a really, really important question. It's like the first big question you get to is, hey, I hear Brett, and people tell me this all the time, Brett, I hear you do it, and you're allowed to do that in Texas. Okay, the state law says you can do 16 for a small and then 17 is a big, but that has nothing to do with the zoning type.
Yes.
So it is literally city by city. It doesn't matter if you're in Dallas or in Austin or in Los Angeles. The state licensure is irrelevant to this part of the conversation. It's what does the local zoning type require?
Yeah.
So most, and I won't say all, but 95% of most cities across the country are not going to let you do a 16 bed like I'm doing in a residential zoning, right? I can't just go take the house next door to me in my neighborhood and make it an assisted living. Now you can argue that fair housing and all these things, you can do it. And the city will, put up a fight, and they'll say, sure, you go ahead and do it. You can do it. And by the way, we're going to limit you to 4 beds, right? You can do it. You don't get to be profitable for it, right? So here's your 4, go ahead. Or maybe 6, maybe if you're lucky, it's 8. But if you're in residential, the city, the planning department, they're looking at their chart. Everything's black and white. It's like, well, you are in residential zoning. That's R1. Well, here's our definition of it. Assisted living, that's business. That is commercial use. That is, pretty clear to us, like you cannot do that. We will not give you the permit for it. So really the starting point is you go and you talk to the planning and zoning, right? Here's what I want to do. I want to build this, or I want to buy and I want to convert this. And most of the time they're going to tell you no in a neighborhood if you want to do a bigger style of deal. So then it puts the next question, well, where can I do this? And really I start by going online to the state's website. Any state, they have a list of all the licensed assisted livings. So you have a literal list, and you have their addresses, and you can go on the city's website and you can plug in that address and find the actual zoning type. So I start with the information in hand, right? Like here are the 20 different assisted livings in my area. I already know the zoning types of them. That's probably what I'm allowed to do. Now let's go talk to the city. And, so there are some cities that will let you do this for residential, not very many. But it is usually like commercial. It might be multifamily. It might be R4. It might be mixed use. You might be pretty easy to buy vacant land, agriculture land, get a special use permit and do that. Maybe there's other different ways, because it's not like here are the 5 that you can do across the country. It's literally city by city. Everyone has a different code. So you just got to go talk to them and go in person, go into the planning and zoning. Here's what I want to do. And say, okay, how do I fall into, right? How are you going to classify me? Am I residential? Am I business? Am I in the gray area somewhere, right? Because sometimes assisted living is different than, say, like room and board or sober living or group home, right? Like for us, we get to end of life and you cannot egress on your own, right? Like if you get bedridden and there's an emergency, you can't get out the front door. If you're in a sober living and the fire alarm goes off, you can usually leave. Right? Like, so there's different requirements and people may put you in a different box. So I think the first question is, well, what box can I go in? And give me the list. And then from there, I want to say, okay, well, that's the list of boxes I can do. What about the ones you didn't tell me? Is there a special use permit for these other options that will get me into a right box that I can go and say, okay, now I know what zoning type. Now I can go look for vacant land, or I can look for a building that I can convert. And that's really the process that I go through.
Yeah, I'm looking at a office / medical building right now in Richardson that used to be a fire department.
Okay.
So I'm like, I'm going to go look at this and see if I can get it converted.
Yeah. Nice. Well, that'll be cool.
Well, I mean, that goes into the question, right? When you're first trying to get into it, right? I still think like anytime I think of new construction, I just think if it's daunting, right? Yeah, even in single family building, right? You just have the leg up on the front end cost, meaning just to get into the dirt, right? Do testing, soil, by the time you start pouring, all that, right? And I'm sure the bigger the footprint, the higher the cost. So if you're just getting into it, is it better to buy, remodel, and then refinance in a sense, right? Convert versus build new?
Yeah, you didn't. Sorry, to piggyback on that, you didn't just start building new right from the get-go.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So you're really saying, you're asking the question, and like,
how do you
here's
get
my
into
path.
the game?
Yeah. So I started with that because, again, we talked about my experience, but it was fix and flip. Like, I had never built new construction, but I had done hundreds of houses. I knew how to rework everything, all that kind of stuff. So then it was just a learning process on the things I didn't know, which was fire sprinklers, connecting to utilities, all that kind of stuff. ADA, that was a huge one. So learning there. So there was a lot of hard lessons that I learned on that process. And so you definitely can do it. But let's unpack that a smidge, because just because you can do it doesn't really mean that you actually can practically do it. So it goes back to the first conversation we had about zoning, right? If you want to take an existing house and you find this beautiful house you like and you want to remodel it and or do an addition to it, when you might be actually able to do that, hire the contractor, get the crew, get a budget that will work. But when you go talk to the planning department and they say, well, yeah, but that's a house. No, you can't do that. Like, you in your city, if you go talk to like the 5 cities around you or your county, you may have literally 0 options for converting a house due to zoning, right? And putting aside, we want to do a 6-bed, buy a house, convert the garage. Like, that's not what we're talking about. If we wanted to build a one and done deal, one big multi-million-dollar deal, you might have literally no options, right? By, going in neighborhoods and doing that kind of stuff. You may have a few different things, but I think that you will get stuck most of the time based on the zoning. Now, if you got past the zoning, then there's 2 more really big deal killers that are out there. The first is the fire marshal. And there's different classifications that he or she will have for you, right? And to kind of simple, it's NFPA chapter 13. It's either the full 13 or there's exceptions, there's D and R. And to simplify that, if you don't know the code, let's just call it a commercial fire suppression system, which would be a 13, or a residential, and that's not technically it, but it's the easiest way to explain it, which is a D or an R. And one's steel and one's plastic, and one is double the cost and needs like 4 times the amount of volume of water and pressure and all that kind of stuff, and really makes it most of the time not possible in an area if you don't have like a 6-inch water line or bigger. So you may say, okay, I'm going to buy this house, the numbers pencil, I got through the zoning, and then I go to the fire marshal and he says, well, yeah, you need this type of sprinkler system and an alarm, and you have to be egress for all these bedrooms, and it has to be, no more than 150 feet and all these different things. And you'd be like, well, shit, like, okay, well, first of all, I can't do it. There's not a fire hydrant around me. I have a 2-inch water line that is not enough to bring, fire flow to all these kind of stuff. Or I have this perfect house. It's in a cul-de-sac. Perfect. You have a fire hydrant, everything. That fire engine can get into your cul-de-sac. They cannot get out of your cul-de-sac. And then they say, no, I'm not going to give you a permit. Like, there are so many different deal killers from the fire marshal going through the. So that, ultimately, that was one of the hugest lessons I learned. I thought, hey, no big deal. People, put in fire sprinklers. It's $100,000 if you're talking about this kind of stuff. If you're going to do a commercial fire suppression system, you're going to connect to the city's line. We have to put in a riser room, right? You can't have your residential line has to be different than your fire line. all these different things, plus fire alarm and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you can add an extra 6+ figures to it if you can even get the deal done. Yeah. So that's a really big potential roadblock that way. And then I know this is a lot, but okay, I'll pause here because I got one more after
that. Did he say pause? Wait.
Yeah, you guys go ahead.
You have one more? Oh,
yeah,
no.
Talk about ADA as the next deal killer, but
go say that, and then I'll ask you my next question.
Yeah, I don't want to cut you off.
Okay, no worries. All right, so you get through all of that, right? I have the house, it pencils, my zoning's good, my fire marshal is lenient, I can get all this deal done. The next thing is ADA. Like, how do you make sure you're compliant? And so there's going to be different requirements of ADA state by state. Here in Texas, you have to be at least 50% compliant to all your different types. So like, well, your front door has to be compliant, right? Your half your bathrooms have to be compliant. Half your bedrooms.
ADA?
Disability.
Yeah. Just to, again, I understood that.
It's like American Disabilities Association.
Is that what it is?
Exactly. Yeah. You have to be accessible, right? For wheelchairs and other things, people who are not ambulatory, you have to be able to provide the same access if you can walk versus if you're in a wheelchair, right? So, I mean, when you start looking at the requirements for ADA, if you looked at like federal ADA, you look at bathrooms, you look at bedrooms, like, man, I tell you what, none of your walls will be able to stay where they're at when you have to make something compliant for ADA. If you're talking just a regular bedroom or bathroom, you have a bathroom, in the house, right? You got a 4-3, you're going to convert the garage, you're going to do this. None of your bathrooms will be compliant. We have a half bath is compliant. At minimum is at like 5 feet by 7.5. That would be minimum. A small full bath for ADA compliant is about 8 foot by 8 foot. So not only do you have to move all of the studs and framings and probably beams, but now you have to jackhammer up the slab and you have to move the toilet line and all that kind of stuff. Make sure you get flow. And you start with this house and it's like, okay, I can make this work. I can make it pencil. But now I realize, I have to take down all of these walls. My hallways, okay, I have to have 32 clear. But from a practical sense, I can't even get a wheelchair down this hallway. I can't get a gurney down this hallway, right? Like I have 6 foot wide hallways for a reason that's purpose built. And so you can go through all of this stuff and then realize either I can't do it because I can't make ADA accessibility, or even worse than that, I am able to squeeze it out. And then I build this building that is so not practical. And my caregivers are pissed at me and they're quitting every 6 months because the physical space is not there to do their job.
And they're getting burnt out.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, so I know Dallas, Richardson, like all the submarkets. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got to go find a 1 acre lot somewhere that I could put a building on that the city lets me. You're in Texas, so my question would be, how did you go from? Because did he say 8 acre? What with the acreage?
Yeah,
with
acres.
the 8 acres?
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Is it? Are you out of county, or are you like? Because doesn't being close to where the kids are matter?
Yeah, great question. So, here in Texas, there is a hack, and it's outside of the city limits. If cities by state law have the power to enforce zoning restrictions, counties in Texas do not have the power to enforce zoning. So counties cannot tell you cannot do this because of zoning code. They can tell you can't do it for other reasons, roads or utilities or something else. But they can't say, hey, you're not zoned for that, because counties don't have the ability to tell you what zoning is. They can classify your property as this or that, and they'll tax you based on it, but they're not going to zone you into different things. So there's really kind of 3 zoning options here specifically in Texas. You have inside of the city limits, which will have the most restrictions on what you can do. You'll have to jump through all the hoops and go through that. Then there is the opposite side of that, outside of the city limits, just in the county, right? So, and that will be the most lenient. There is, again, not the ability to impose zoning restrictions. And there's a lot of times very, very loose on the permits. And sometimes there's like, it's like a pay $25 fee and write a paragraph and tell me what you're going to do. And like, that's it. Like sometimes it's crazy, like wild, wild west. So that's the two ends. There is a middle area called the extraterritorial jurisdiction, more commonly known as the ETJ. And that is kind of a combo between the two. It is technically outside of the city limits. So there's not the ability to impose zoning restrictions, but it is an area that the city has claimed as their future city. We are growing into that, and therefore they have an arrangement with the county that they're growing into that, and they are able to make some requirements on what you can build there. And for me, both of my assisted livings have been in the ETJ, right? So outside of city limits, not in a non-zoned area. But the city has still said, hey, here are the hoops you have to jump through. And, it's sidewalk and, retention ponds and other things like that. So really, I think the shortcut to your success here in Texas, specifically in Texas, is looking outside of the city limits. And we have been growing as a state so rapidly that cities are not keeping up with incorporating in a circle as they're expanding. They're not keeping up with building, right? Like home builders are coming and building all sorts of stuff, expanding out further and further outside of the city limits. So honestly, like a lot of the stuff around me is outside of the city limits by several miles. And you feel like you're in the middle of the city, but you're not actually in the city. You're not paying city taxes. Your taxes go to the county. And so it's a big opportunity in that space to kind of do that, specifically here in Texas. That I think that's the best way to go.
Do you think that there's a max distance? Again, affluent people in Dallas are North Dallas, Plano, Frisco, McKinney. Do you think going to Prosper, Salina, Van Alstyne, right, going up a thoroughfare, what's the an hour, 45 minutes from, you see what I'm getting at? Like,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So
I'm just trying to figure out, like, as to if I'm going to put 20 people in a house, I don't want them all to dread going to find grandma.
Yeah, for sure. 20 minutes is for sure, hands down, no problem.
Yeah.
Again, if you're in a big Dallas metro area, right? Like 45 minutes could be an hour and a half, depending on the time of day. But if you lived out in the country and there's going to be no traffic anytime, 45 minutes is 45 minutes. And so if you lived out in the country, then 45 minutes is probably not a big deal. But again, if you're in the metro area, that might not be, that would be, for me, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Now, how far will family drive? And it's usually daughter. How far will daughter drive? Come at it from this perspective is the first time they go to place mom, they're going to place her as close as possible. And I go back to this analogy of the big box funnel. They're going to start with less care, pay less money. And after a couple of years, they know the system after a few years, like they're going to get bad care. It's what happens when the big smelly facilities, they're going to get bad care. They're going to decline. Then here's the next opportunity. Are we moving to somewhere in that same facility, or are we going to move something different? Ultimately, most of the grandmas that come into our mansion, they are not coming from home because we're end of life. They're coming from the big box funnel. So from that perspective, after several years of mom getting bad care, you as the daughter or power of attorney are way more willing now at this point to drive 20 minutes, no problem. 45 minutes, maybe, to make sure that you get quality care for mom. And if you are of more financial means, then you're only going to be considering the nice places with the private room, with the chef, all that kind of stuff. And there's not a lot of options on that perspective. And most of them are new construction, big smelly facility.
I like that.
You kind of touched on, you grazed over this, right, earlier. Dave posts here, right? How many folks can I put in a 3-2? What is the minimum, right? So I know you were talking about two eight beds, right? But I'm sure that's not the minimum. But I'm sure it's damn near close to being the minimum, right?
So okay, again, general and then specific. Across the country, it's different state by state by state, right? Here in Texas, you do not need a license at 1, 2, or 3 residents, right? You can have 3. Yep. If you have this question specifically, if you have a 3-bedroom house, you can for sure put 3 grandmas in there, and you do not have to have a license. That is allowed. Licensure specifically says here in Texas, you're a small or you're a large. A small is 4 to 16. A large is 17 and greater. So you can take a 3-bedroom house and you can run it without a license, which means you do not have to comply with any of those things we talked about, the zoning, the fire marshal, the ADA, none of that stuff, right? You can make your sales be at 5, 6 grand a month, whatever it is, have, 15 to 25 grand a month of income. I want to be the one to tell people, don't do that. Like, I know it is easy. I know when you are a real estate guy and you're a flipper, like, I can buy discounted houses all day long, every single week. I can scale this, put them all over the place. You can scale a business that will lose money. Yep. And it will be a headache and it will be so difficult. And I really don't recommend it. Put the numbers down. Look at what staffing costs. Staffing 5 years ago, you might be able to do that 6-bed model 5 years ago when people were legitimately paying $10 an hour for caregivers. No one's paying that anymore, right? Like, a lot of places, they're $20 an hour just to get people to apply. Yep. And when you pencil in all of those 24/7 staff and what you have to pay for insurance now, it's doubled. Food, utilities have all doubled. Like, that model, I think, is no longer feasible. Like, it was tight before and you could do a couple of them and make a decent salary. Man, I just think that when you know the numbers and you ask people who are in it, they're making, no money and need to have multiple just to survive.
I had this question. I keep on pushing it off, but we keep on going back. When it comes down to hiring, right? How do you do that? Where do you find your sources? Or is that something that you're outsourcing to a third party? I know when we do hiring, I have them run psychological tests just to make sure that they are A type for sales or this type for that. You were talking about making sure that they're very caring and they are nurturing and such in their manners. So can you run me through a little bit of your hiring, right? Especially starting
for sure.
out.
So really it's 2 sides. It's job boards and then it's community. That's who we're looking for. We get most of our people we hire are from job boards, and we specifically use Indeed. We've tried lots of different things. Indeed gets us the best results. We ultimately craft almost like a sales letter, right? We are crafting our hiring post, not like every other one when you go look at, like, here is, if you are this avatar, right? If you're, young female, you want the flexibility to take your kids to school in the morning or pick them up in the afternoon. Like, you're not gonna be working crazy hours. You can make good money. You can serve a purpose. You can live with passion. We are crafting it in that perspective, putting it on Indeed. And really we pay $1 to $2 more than pretty much all the other facilities in the area. So that's where we get, I would say, 90% of our hires on that side there. The other side is in the community. It's from our Facebook group. It's from the networking. It's from, we talk about all these different outside services. They have a wide variety of people who, like, this is their niche and they'll get referred to us in that perspective.
Do you have any when you go into talk about networking and community services, like, do you have any volunteer programs, right, where people come by and they help out, or they like community services?
Do, yeah. So going back to this outside services, hospice and home health are the biggest people in that. And they actually have people on staff that are marketing people, and they will literally go and they'll knock on your door like a couple times a week. There'll be all these different hospice. They show up with a thing of pencils and cookies and stuff. And, hey, here's our hospice company. We're new, think of us next time, blah, blah, blah. Right. So many people they're literally full-time. Their job is to go and network and market and do all that kind of stuff, build relationships. They are our activity people. They come in. We'll schedule lots of different people, right? We'll bring in 2 different hospice companies, a week or a couple times a month. And they do free activities, right? We have literally, they come in and they sit with the grandmas and they'll do whatever it is. They'll do, armchair exercises. They'll do Bible study. They'll do bingo. They'll do all sorts of stuff, right? We have 2 activities a day, a morning and an afternoon. So we will leverage a lot of the people in the community to do it. And then my wife's just really, really involved in our community, and she'll post, there's lots of people who are, female 50 to 70 younger grandmas, retired, who are looking for opportunities to serve and help. And we're very involved in those kind of, groups. And so then we bring in a lot of people. So we don't pay for activities, right? If you are a large facility in Texas, you technically have to have an activities person on salary. Okay, 17 and above. If you are a small 4 to 16, you do not. It's not in the code. So we do not. We don't pay for anybody to do that. And we just bring in lots of different people to help out with all that kind of stuff. And who doesn't, like, if you're not in a big, scary, smelly place and people yelling and having dementia, fits, and you can literally just like tea time or bingo with grandma, and like, it's fun and it's chill and it's peaceful and it's relaxing. Like, there's a lot of people that come, and then we'll post on our social all the time. And then we're like, hey, who wants to come and hang out with us and, play cards with grandma? And so we bring a lot of people in that way.
You ever have any horror stories or incidents with the guests?
So
old people fighting, ripping off wigs.
You definitely get behaviors, and behaviors is a term that you use for like incidents, right? Like, I mean, you talked about is it Happy Gilmore?
Yep.
Where they have an incident, right? Like, you definitely have that kind of stuff as people decline and have dementia, and it's usually like the sweetest ladies. You'll have like these, 89-year-old ladies who are these like 90 pounds and super sweet and like love Jesus. And all of a sudden, like that time of day, it's like 3 PM and it just like switches, and they're like scratching and spitting and like trying to, and they'll say like the most vulgar things. And they're almost 100 years old. They'll use these terms from back when they were a kid. And it's like, what did you just call me? Like, who says that? Right. But that's where their mind is. A lot of times they think they're back to a teenager. Like, they have to call their mom or they're going to get in trouble. They're going to get grounded. Right. Like, that's where they're at. And then they lose their cool, and they, again, they don't know where they are at. They don't even know who they are. It's so sad. Sometimes it's like, they'll ask, who am I? Where am I? And you just redirect, and we call them angel lies. Like, you're lying to them flat out. Right. But you're doing it in their best interest. You're doing it to love and support them. And, that's just part of how you care for people at that stage.
Rule of thumb, keep the knives locked up.
For sure, right?
Chef, you can take grandma off the streets, but you can't take the streets out of grandma.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there's that part. It's, a lot of times when you are beginning to middle dementia or Alzheimer's, you have moments where what's happening. You come back, and then you get suicidal. You're ready to end this. Like, you're a doctor and you're an attorney, or you're very well off, and now all of a sudden you crap on yourself every day. You can't walk and you speak gibberish, and then you have a moment where you come back and you realize everything that's going on, and it's like, oh gosh, like, where's the knives? So we, for that reason, do keep them locked up.
Did you just, my last question is, how did you, because I don't know, I'm a real estate investor, and kind of people always paint us as the big bad wolves who, steal from grandma and grandpa, all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
We take their houses and stuff. Was this a passion for you, or did it turn into the passion? Like, because now I'm segueing my resources and I'm pulling my people to do this. And it's because it's a passion, because there's a significant need for it. My best friends are in the business, and they're, the stories we hear are just so god awful. How did you get here to where you're like, I want this, I want to do this, I want to give back, right? I mean, we've been successful real estate people. Like, how did this become your pay it forward, if you will? I know it's I know the byproduct is the money, but the point of it. Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, we started with my story. I was in real estate, grew a business, worked my way out of it, worked very little in that business. But I still wanted to be in real estate. I love building things. It's really what makes me excited. And I wanted to do that in a way that actually gave back. Flipping and wholesaling, like, maybe you can argue you're making the neighborhood better and blah, 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 right? But like, you're kind of negotiating against the seller. You're like, there wasn't like this wholesome feeling to it, right? Like, or yeah, the buyer. So I really wanted to do something where I could build something, live with purpose, and really make amazing money. And this is what I found to do it. I actually tried sober living. Between these kind of steps here, I had for a couple of years, I had a group home. I took gentlemen off the streets, and they lived in a house. We had a live-in manager. We took care of them. I did that for about 2 years until they set the house on fire. And that was, the last straw. And I sold that. And it's like, okay, well, we're not going to scale that. Like, what do I do? Okay, grandma's not going to set the house on fire, right? Like, they're not going to steal my water heater for drug money. So, okay, let's look into this. And that got me going down this path to trying to figure this out. And then it really was figuring it out, because the only resources out there at the time, a few years ago, was, hey, here's how to do a 6-bed, right? Here's how to buy a house, convert the garage, and hire a live-in manager, caregiver person. And, you can make 10 grand a month if you were 100% occupied. Right. And I'm like, God, that doesn't pencil to me. That doesn't make sense. Right. What happens if I have 2 people, 2 open beds, right? I'm going to lose 5 grand. Like, that's not reasonable to me. So then it got me down this path, and I spent a few years trying to figure this out. Like, the whole, like, everything we just talked through, the zoning stuff, the fire marshal, the ADA, and going through that, and then learning hard lessons, and like, okay, well, now I'm only going to build new construction. And then scaling that and saying, okay, I'm going to build a neighborhood of these things, economy of scale. And at some point, in 5 to 10 years, I'll sell this to a big REIT or something for a crazy amount of money.
Yeah, that's awesome. And thank you, because it's needed. I think the statistic is something like we need 1 million beds here in the next couple of years because of the boomers, right? So there's an insane need for it. And I really got to commend you for doing it at the level that you are, at the quality that you are. Like, again, where I said the byproduct is the money. You're not doing it for the money. You're doing it for the love of it and the paying it forward. And yes, that comes with a premium, right? But you're offering all the premium services. And I think that's huge and insanely valuable. So I commend you for that.
So tip X here, right? How much capital does it take to start? But I think that this depends on whether or not you're doing what you're doing, right? So you there?
Sorry, you cut out. Will you say that again?
Sorry about that. I was just talking about Tip's question here, right? Tip's asking how much capital does it take to start?
Yeah.
But I think that would also depend on whether or not you're going to do new construction or you're going to do a rehab property and such, right? So,
yeah, I can tell you about our project right now. So,
okay, perfect.
If you're going to build, and I can tell you specifically about numbers here in Texas, if you're going to build one mansion and it's 10,000 square feet, 16 bedroom, 17 bath, it costs me about 2.25 million. So it's about 1.7 million for the building from the slab up. The land was a couple $100 grand, and then the site, utilities, and landscaping stuff, right? So about 2.25. So that's what that cost. I did an SBA 7A loan, and they'll lend me 85% of all the capital, all the hard costs for the building, the construction draw, the interest while I'm building. They'll lend the interest on the business side while you're filling up the grandmas, all the furniture, the working capital, all the FF&E. They'll lend 85% of everything. So you take that 2.2 number and it puts you closer to about 2.8. And so they'll lend 85% of that number, which again puts you at like about a $400,000 down payment amount. So I raised money on equity, have an equity partner that put up that capital, and then from there I didn't use any of my own capital, and we were able to finance this whole thing using the SBA loan to build new construction and cover the first 6 months of all the expenses on the business side.
What was it? It was you cut out. It was SBA
7A.
7A.
Yeah, there's a 504 and there's a 7A.
Yeah.
And I really think that for this product that we do, an SBA loan is the best way to go, because you have two sides. You have a real estate company and you have an operations company, And, that operations company has several $100,000 worth of startup expenses, especially when you're talking about those first few months of paying salary and staff to before you fill up all your grandmas.
Yeah. What's your typical build time, right? Is it 6 months? Is it 8?
It's
What are you
9 months.
usually penciling in?
Yeah, 9 months.
9 months,
Mhm.
and then you're giving yourself 6 months runway to occupy full occupancy?
Yeah, close-ish. So licensure here in Texas is 6 to 8 weeks if you expedite. So that puts you close to a year, maybe a smidge under, and it's done in a 2-part here. You can bring in first 3 set of your residents, and then you call for second inspection, and you get your full license. So really, we do a marketing program we call the Strategic 20, and it's essentially the gist of it is, how do we steal all the grandmas from the big smelly facility that are getting bad care? So we have a wait list while we're under construction, and then we get our full license, and we just move in this wave of grandmas coming in. It would probably be maybe month 13 or 14, something to that. Maybe around month 12 or 13, something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's good turn time. What are your goals and dreams moving forward, right? Are you just going to keep on building these 16 units and stay in that, what was it, 4 to 16, and then anything over 17? Are you going to stay in that smaller space, or?
So yeah, I'm not going to build a 17 or bigger. I think the best way to scale and grow is to do multiple, and that's why I'm building this neighborhood. So we will have 80 beds that we will directly, my wife runs our operations company, right, and has our staff to do that. We will have 80 beds here in Georgetown, Texas. And
That's awesome.
that's plenty for me. We'll, this is a play. At some point, we'll sell off everything to some big corporate or REIT or something like that. As we continue to expand, how I'm really scaling my business is I learned all of these lessons. I pretty much created everything as I'm growing my business. I have like 40 different baby steps, and I'm really partnering with people all over the country to say, hey, here, let me be a minority position on your deal, and I'll show you step by step. You'll use my exact architectural building plans, all of our systems for marketing and operation, and we'll be with you. We meet up every single week in small group calls and go through it. And that's how I continue to grow and scale my business.
Well, you're about to help us start one up in DFW. So
from this call, we're about to go out of city. I'm getting out of DFW. I've been looking at Richardson and Plano, thinking that I need to stay around like rich folk, but I'm really no. People are dying. They'll travel. They'll pay, and out of city is definitely a lot more beneficial. I don't need to deal with Farmers Branch.
DFW goes all the way up to Oklahoma.
I know that. We got to go east and west.
Fantastic, guys.
I'm going to touch on Dave's 2 questions real quick. So real quick, Dave. This is going to be saved on YouTube. So the same link that you're on right now will get you back to this to rewatch it all the time. Also, just a little shout out. If you go in the comments and you click on the link, that's to join the community. I go live every day for up to 2 hours helping our community. So if anybody's involved in that, that's part of this. Just click the link in the comments. His second question is, are you interested in partnering on a single family home in North Carolina?
So we only do one thing. And that's what we talked about today. So if you want to do that, if your ideal product is the same as mine, you want to build a luxury new construction 16 bed, I will help you do that. But we don't do anything outside of that box.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, I wasn't sure if this was even pertaining to us, right, Dave? But no, like, again, keep your focus on one thing, right? So for us, it's just DFW until we venture out into assisted grandma living.
Even in our prelim conversations over the last couple of weeks, we were originally thinking things like, 6 to 8 beds. And the more I read HHS and all this stuff, I'm like, this is a lot for 6 or 8 people. And then so it's funny because I read the same HHS statute that said 17 plus. So I love that you hit the 16 mark and you're like, I'm not going for 17.
So actually,
super, super intelligent.
Can you kind of outline why you won't jump up to past 16 or 17? Because again, we're
licensure.
But what about it, right? So what are the hard parts?
Oh,
that's my point. Right? So,
the licensure is consider it in two parts. There's rules and regs requirements for the building, and that's gonna be different from the 16 versus 17. It's not really that much different, but they make you put in things that are more facility like, just ugly hospital looking type things go into that code. So that's one part. I don't want to do it really. I don't see the benefit. I really think that 16 is the sweet number, and it gives me my best profit. I can provide the best product. So back to the first point here, the licensure on the real estate side says, different codes, more strict, more facility gross kind of codes. And then on the operation side, there are additional things. It's mostly the same, but there are stricter things that you have to do on the operations company side. We talked about one example being if you have a 17 or greater, you have to have a salary person as an activity person, right? Like there's other things like that. They're not huge deal killers. They're not drastically different, but they are designed for, really like a 60 bed facility. That's how it's written. That's what their best intention is for.
Man,
dude, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
That was,
my head's blown. Like I'm trying to think of more questions to ask, but there's always so much. There's always more I can ask. Does anybody have a question that they didn't ask? Please drop it in the comments while we still have Brett and the conversation going.
I want to hop in the truck.
Add in here.
Hop in the truck and come down and visit.
How far is that?
You guys are.
I don't even know where that's at. Tommy, get the camera.
Yeah,
we're going for a trip.
So for you guys or any other people that are listening, I have a bunch of resources. I created several courses and they're all free. And again, I hope you hear this from this call, but I'm a kind of a no BS, like here's how it is. I'm not going to fluff anything. Like I'll show you exactly what we're doing. So I recorded me going like, here's exactly what we're doing. So I have 3 different trainings. I do what's called our foundations training. It's 15 modules, kind of overviewing, kind of from a high level. Here's all the things, the whole roadmap. And then from there, I have a location selection training that it really goes down. Here is every little thing that you should consider as you're talking to the city, the building, the fire marshal. Here's your list of questions. Here's everything that I go through from utilities to due diligence, all that kind of stuff. And then funding, same thing. Like what type of loan do I get? Like I deep dive into SBA versus commercial. How do you build the business plan? How do you do the finances? All that kind of stuff is in the portal. And really my intention is like, I want to show people, here is this other path. Like when I got into it, there was only one option. Here's how to make 10 grand if you're lucky converting a house. And I didn't think that was reasonable. Like I want to say like, here is a better way to go. And I don't see anybody else talking about it. So I'm just going to talk about it. And everything that I'm doing on my journey, I'm just, I'm sharing on the podcast, and then I create these free courses for everybody.
I appreciate it, man. That's a huge, huge give to the community, and it will come back.
Where? So those just to
so palm.university.
Right? So those are on where?
www.palm.university. So Palm is Platinum Assisted Living Mansion. So Palm.
Oh, man, that's the one link I don't think I threw in the comments.
That's okay.
But
we'll make sure we put it out there for you.
Yeah. So I'm continuing to add stuff there.
Oh, wow.
I
Memory
will
Care
build out
Mansion.
Yeah, you can go there too. They'll link to each other.
That's awesome.
And so my funding course, I'm actually releasing it on the 9th of next month. I'm building out the final videos. I got something like 20, 25 videos that I've been building out on that. So I'm working my way through. I got 4 frameworks. This is really the 4 steps, right? Location selections first, then funding, then construction, then licensure. So by the end of the year, I should have 2 other free trainings available going through construction. Do you want to, convert a house? Do you want to build new construction? Working with builders, architects, engineers, going through all that kind of stuff. And then same with licensure. And it'll all be there on the website for everyone to check out.
Dude, thank you. And if there's anything that we could do, you let us know. We'll be happy to, we'll be happy to help.
I appreciate your time, man, honestly, and everything that you and your wife are doing. Honestly, I appreciate it. So keep crushing it, man.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you guys spending some time with me, and I hope this is helpful to your community.
No, you have no idea. It's helpful for me.
Yeah.
Good. Well,
I appreciate everybody sticking around, dropping some questions. As always, if anybody needs anything, reach out. The Sicilian Brothers REIAF, where community is in the comments. Join it. We go live every day for up to 2 hours, helping everybody. We have our contracts, our deal analyzers on there, scripts, data. If you need help with anything, we'll help you. So keep crushing it, guys, and God bless.